Welcome to our deep dive. And this one is all about you, about the fascinating world of self-talk. And, I think a lot of people hear the phrase self-taught and they think, oh, am I going crazy?
Right.
Like, am I talking to myself? But it turns out pretty much everybody does it. And not only that,
Yeah, we all do it.
but it's actually really good for us.
It can be, yeah.
I've got a stack of research that shows that people who regularly talk to themselves, whether out loud or in their head, they tend to be better thinkers, they have better emotional control.
Yeah, it's like having that little coach right there with you all the time.
Yes.
Inner voice helping you through.
Like having an internal coach guiding us through the day.
Exactly.
But as is often the case here on the deep dive, we find that things are not always what they seem.
Right.
And so it is with self-talk.
Definitely.
Because it can be this powerful tool for good, but it can also be a sneaky little saboteur.
It can sabotage you for sure.
Yeah, so let's dive into that.
Okay.
We were reading through the research, and one of the things that really jumped out at us is this idea of negative self-talk. So this is kind of the dark side of self-talk.
The dark side.
When that little voice in your head, instead of being encouraging, is actually like putting you down.
Yeah.
Have you ever experienced this?
Oh, yeah, all the time. I think we all have. And
Yeah.
the research even points to some really common phrases that people use in these moments of negative self-talk.
Like what?
Like, you might catch yourself saying things like, oh, I'm so stupid, or I'm such a failure.
Yeah.
Things like that.
Not familiar.
I think it does to a lot of us.
Yeah, and one of our sources even highlighted how this plays out, like in social situations like going on a date.
Oh, yeah.
Imagine you're on a date, you say something you think is awkward, and that inner voice just jumps right in.
Right, there it is.
And it says,
Oh, I'm such an idiot.
yeah,
Why did I say that?
why did I even come on this date?
Exactly. And, those kinds of thoughts can really sabotage your confidence.
Oh, yeah, for
And
sure.
not just on a date, but in any situation, really.
Yeah, it's like we're setting ourselves up for failure before we even give ourselves a chance.
Yeah. And then sometimes I think we don't even realize we're doing it.
Right.
It's just this automatic reaction.
It's that default setting.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But the good news is
Yeah.
we don't have to let those negative thoughts win.
Okay, so there is a way out of this.
There is a way out. We
Okay.
can actually train ourselves to talk back to that inner critic.
So it's not just about like trying to ignore it.
No, it's about actively changing the conversation.
Okay, so how do we do that?
Well, that's where positive self-talk comes in.
Yeah.
It's about consciously choosing to replace those negative messages with encouraging ones.
Could you give me an example?
Sure, instead of thinking, I'm going to mess this up, you can try saying something like, I've got this, I'm well prepared, and I can handle whatever comes my way.
It's like giving yourself a mental pep talk.
Exactly.
Oh, like that.
And speaking of pep talks, did you know that athletes use positive self-talk extensively to enhance their performance?
Oh, yeah.
It's a common strategy in sports psychology. They'll literally psych themselves up before competitions with phrases like, I am strong or I am ready.
So they're training their minds to focus on their strengths and boost their confidence.
Exactly.
That's so powerful.
And anyone can benefit from this technique,
Yeah,
It's
yeah.
not just for elite athletes.
So whether you're prepping for a presentation,
Right.
or tackling a challenge at work, or even learning a new language,
Absolutely.
positive self-talk can help.
It can make a big difference.
That's awesome.
And speaking of learning a new language,
Yeah.
self-talk can actually be a really powerful technique for that too.
Okay, I've heard of people talking to themselves to practice vocabulary,
Mm-hmm.
but is there more to it than that?
There is research suggests that speaking your thoughts out loud, even if you're just talking to yourself, can improve your memory and comprehension.
So it's like you're reinforcing those new words and phrases by engaging multiple senses.
Exactly. You're hearing them, you're speaking them, you're even feeling the movements of your mouth as you pronounce them.
So it's like giving your brain a multisensory workout
Exactly.
to help those new language skills stick.
It makes a big difference.
I like it. All right, so we've talked about the good, we've talked about the bad.
Yeah.
But there's another aspect of self-talk that I want to dive into.
Okay.
And it's something that I found really interesting in the research.
Yeah.
It's the role of slang.
Slang.
Yeah.
That's a fun one.
So slang in our self-talk.
Yeah, it might seem strange to think about using slang when you're talking to yourself,
Right.
but it can actually add a layer of authenticity and kind of nuance to the way you express yourself, even if it's just to yourself.
Yeah, it's like you're adding a little bit of personality
Exactly.
to your inner voice.
Yeah, give it some flavor.
Yeah, so some of the slang terms that we came across in the research were things like dumbass
What the
bullshit
hell?
and what the hell.
The hell?
And I think
Yeah.
I'm not suggesting that we like go around using these in every
Right.
conversation, but understanding them,
Yeah.
even if it's just for our internal monologues,
I agree.
can help us grasp those subtle shades of meaning
Yeah.
in everyday English.
For sure. And, it's all about expanding your linguistic toolbox.
Yeah.
Even if it's just for those conversations you're having with yourself.
Right. So when we think about all the ways we use self-talk in our daily lives, it's remarkable how often we're engaging in these internal dialogues.
It really is. It's happening all the time.
Give me some examples.
We talk to ourselves while we're making decisions at the grocery store. Do I really need this?
Yeah.
We talk to ourselves while we're cooking. Is this cooked enough?
Yeah.
And we even talk to ourselves while we're getting ready for important events. Don't forget the tickets.
Yeah, it's almost like self-talk is this invisible glue that holds our daily lives together.
It really is. It helps us focus problems live and navigate through all the ups and downs of everyday life.
So it's a constant stream of commentary running through our mind.
Exactly.
But there's a crucial distinction we need to make here.
Okay.
Self-talk, those inner conversations we've been discussing, that's a normal part of the human experience.
Totally normal.
But what happens when those voices become uncontrollable?
Right. That's when it can become a problem.
Yeah.
If you ever start hearing voices that feel intrusive or distressing or beyond your control, that's a different story altogether.
Okay, so that's not what we're talking about.
No, not at all.
That could be a sign of a mental health issue.
Exactly. And in those cases, it's crucial to seek professional help.
Yeah, we don't want anyone to feel afraid to talk to themselves.
No, of course not.
Because again, it's a natural part of being human.
It is.
But if those internal conversations ever start to feel overwhelming or like they're taking over, it's essential to reach out for support.
Absolutely.
So it's about recognizing the difference between healthy self-talk,
right,
which is something we can learn to manage.
and use to our advantage, but also recognizing when it might be something more serious.
Exactly. All right, so that's a really important distinction to make.
It is. Okay, so we've established that self-talk is like this powerful force in our lives, right? And it's something that we can learn to control. But how do we go about shifting those like negative self-talk patterns and harness that power of the positive self-talk?
That's the big question.
Yeah, that's what we're going to explore now.
Okay, so it's like we've identified the problem, that inner critic.
That pesky inner critic.
Yeah, but now we need to figure out how to tame it.
Exactly.
So I was looking through the research, and one of the things that really jumped out at me was this idea of becoming aware of your negative self-talk. Triggers.
Triggers. Okay, what do you mean by that?
Well, think about it. Like, what are those situations or thoughts that tend to, like, send you down that spiral of negativity?
Yeah.
So for some people, it might be public speaking. For others, it might be dealing with conflict or receiving criticism.
Those moments when that inner critic really starts to, like, ramp up the volume.
Yeah, it's like all of a sudden it's got a megaphone.
Yeah, exactly.
So the idea is to identify those specific situations that tend to activate those negative thoughts.
So you know what to look out for.
Yeah, so you can anticipate them. And be ready to challenge them.
So it's not about suppressing those thoughts entirely. But it's about having a plan in place to deal with them when they inevitably arise.
Absolutely. And one of the most powerful techniques for doing that is something called reframing.
Reframing, I like that. What's that all about?
So it's about taking those negative thoughts and consciously choosing to see them from a different perspective. A more positive perspective.
So instead of getting stuck in that loop of self-criticism, you're essentially reframing the situation.
Exactly.
Okay, I like that.
Could you give us an example?
Yeah, give me an example of how that might work in practice.
Sure. Let's say you make a mistake at work.
Happens to the better of us.
And your immediate reaction is that familiar wave of self-doubt. Oh, I'm such an idiot, I'm going to get fired.
Ouch, that's a harsh self-assessment.
Yeah, but with reframing, you might take a moment to pause and challenge that thought. Instead of beating yourself up, you might say, okay, I made a mistake. Everyone makes mistakes. It's an opportunity to learn and grow from this experience.
I like that much more constructive. You're shifting your focus to the potential for growth and improvement.
It's about replacing self-condemnation with self-compassion. And what's amazing is that this shift in perspective can have a ripple effect on your emotions and your behavior.
So instead of getting bogged down in negativity and self-doubt, you're empowering yourself to move forward with confidence and resilience.
And that's what we want.
That's the goal.
So speaking of empowering techniques,
yes,
our sources also highlight the power of affirmations.
Affirmations.
Yeah, those positive statements.
Like I am capable, I am worthy, I am strong.
Yeah, those little nuggets of positivity
yes,
that we can use to counteract those negative thoughts.
Exactly. But do those really work?
Yeah, it almost seems too simple to be true.
I know, but research suggests that consistently feeding your mind with positive messages can actually rewire your brain over time.
So it's like planting seeds of positivity
Exactly.
that eventually blossom into greater confidence and well-being,
And it's not just about feeling good in the moment.
right?
It's about creating lasting changes in how you perceive yourself.
That's pretty incredible.
It is. And you know what's interesting?
What?
Affirmations can be particularly powerful when combined with visualization.
So it's not just about saying the words,
Right.
it's about creating a mental image of yourself succeeding.
Exactly. Imagine yourself confidently delivering that presentation,
Uh-huh.
acing that job interview, or effortlessly speaking a new language in a social setting.
Yeah.
By repeatedly visualizing yourself achieving your goals,
Uh-huh.
you're essentially strengthening those neural pathways in your brain.
It's like giving your brain a sneak peek of what's possible.
Yeah, and making that success more likely.
Awesome.
Now, another technique that I found really resonated with me
Okay.
is the practice of gratitude journaling.
The power of gratitude.
It's amazing how simply shifting our focus to what we're thankful for can transform our entire mindset.
So how does this work in the context of negative self-talk?
Well, instead of ruminating on all the things that are wrong in your life
Right.
or focusing on your perceived shortcomings,
Uh-huh.
you're intentionally directing your attention towards the positive aspects of your life.
It's like giving your inner critic a much-needed break.
Exactly. And over time, that shift in focus can actually rewire your brain
Oh.
to naturally gravitate towards those positive thoughts and feelings.
So as you consistently focus on what you're grateful for,
Mm-hmm.
you're training your brain to notice and appreciate the good.
It's like shifting your internal dialogue from a constant stream of complaints to a chorus of appreciation.
I like that.
It's a beautiful thing.
So we've been talking a lot about the mental aspects of self-talk,
Right.
but our sources also highlight the importance of physical well-being
Oh,
to
absolutely.
shaping our inner dialogue.
It's not just about what's going on in our minds.
Right.
It's also about how we're taking care of our bodies.
So things like,
Exercise, sleep, a healthy diet,
Yeah.
all of these things can actually impact our self-talk patterns.
so you're saying that taking care of our physical health
Yes.
can be easier to cultivate positive self-talk.
Absolutely. It's all interconnected.
Okay.
When our bodies feel good, our minds tend to follow suit.
So if you're sleep deprived,
Right.
stressed and running on junk food,
Yeah.
it's going to be much harder
Much harder.
to sun those positive affirmations.
Uh-huh. And challenge those negative thoughts.
It's like trying to run a marathon on an empty stomach and no sleep.
Exactly. You're setting yourself up for failure from the start.
So if we want to harness the power of positive self-talk,
Mm-hmm.
taking care of our physical well-being is crucial.
It's a crucial foundation.
Okay, and here's another piece of the puzzle
That's-
often overlooked.
What's that?
The people we surround ourselves with.
Our social circles.
I've definitely noticed how my mood and outlook can be influenced by the people I spend time with.
Oh, absolutely. The people we interact with on a regular basis
Uh.
can have a huge impact on our thoughts or feelings
Yeah.
and even our self-talk patterns.
If you're constantly surrounded by negativity and criticism,
Right.
it's going to be much harder to cultivate a positive inner dialogue.
It's like trying to grow a delicate flower in a harsh and unforgiving environment.
It's going to struggle to thrive.
Exactly. So surrounding yourself with supportive, encouraging, and uplifting people
Uh-huh.
can create a much more fertile ground for positive self-talk to flourish.
So it's about creating a social ecosystem
Yes.
that nourishes your mental and emotional well-being.
I love that analogy.
And what about the physical environments we inhabit?
Oh, interesting point.
Can they also influence our self-talk?
Absolutely. Think about it. If you're constantly in a cluttered, chaotic, and stressful environment, it's going to be much harder to find that inner peace and clarity.
Yeah.
That's so essential for cultivating positive self-talk.
It's like trying to meditate in the middle of a traffic jam.
Exact. You might be able to block out some of the noise,
Right.
but it's going to be an uphill battle.
Yeah, but if you create a calm, organized,
Right.
and aesthetically pleasing space,
Uh-huh.
it can actually promote a sense of tranquility and well-being.
And that can influence your self-talk in a positive way.
So it's not just about who we surround ourselves with,
Right.
but also about the physical spaces we inhabit.
Our surroundings can either support or hinder our efforts
Exactly.
to cultivate a more positive inner dialogue.
And you know what's a simple yet powerful way to shift your environment
What's that?
and create a more positive mental space?
I'm listening.
Spending time in nature.
The great outdoors.
I've always found that being in nature has a way of calming my mind and lifting my spirits.
It's true, whether it's a walk in the park, a hike in the woods, or simply sitting by a lake.
Yep.
Nature has this incredible ability to soothe our nervous systems
Uh-huh.
and quiet those racing thoughts.
Like hitting the reset button on
Exactly.
our internal dialogue.
And as we immerse ourselves in the beauty and serenity of the natural world,
Mm-hmm.
our self-talk often naturally becomes more positive and appreciative.
It's like our minds are mirroring the peace and harmony we
Really?
experience in nature.
Beautiful. And you know what? Sometimes simply changing our physical posture
Really?
can impact our self-talk.
How so?
Well, think about it. If you're slumped over, shoulders hunched and hoed down,
Uh-huh.
it's going to be much harder to feel confident and empowered.
Right. It's almost as if our body language
Yeah,
is reinforcing those negative thoughts and feelings.
exactly. But if you stand tall, shoulders back, and head held high,
Uh-huh.
it sends a completely different message to your brain.
So it's a posture of confidence and strength?
Yes, and that can have a positive impact on your self-talk.
So it's not just about the words we're saying to ourselves.
Right.
It's also about how we're holding ourselves.
Our body language plays a role in shaping our internal dialogue.
Interesting. And sometimes even something as simple as smiling can make a difference.
Oh, the power of a smile.
It's contagious.
It really is. And even if you don't feel like smiling at first,
Yeah.
simply engaging those muscles can actually trick your brain into feeling happier.
So it's like sending a message of positivity from your face to your mind.
Exactly. And as your mood shifts,
Uh-huh.
you'll probably find that your self-talk naturally becomes more optimistic and encouraging.
It's all about creating that positive feedback loop
Yes.
between our thoughts, feelings, and even our physical expressions.
Love it. So I know we've covered a lot of ground here,
Okay.
but before we wrap up this part of our deep dive
Okay.
into shifting negative self-talk patterns, is there one key takeaway you want our listener to remember?
I think the most important message is that transforming your self-talk is a journey.
Mm-hmm.
It's not a destination.
It's not going to happen overnight.
It takes time, effort, and consistent practice.
You're not going to magically eliminate all those negative thoughts overnight.
No.
It's about recognizing that we all have that inner critic,
Right.
but we can learn to manage it
Yeah.
and even turn it into a source of strength.
Right. With consistent practice and a commitment to cultivating a more positive inner dialogue,
Yes.
we can rewire our brains and harness the incredible power of positive self-talk.
Absolutely.
Welcome back to our deep dive all about self-talk.
Yeah, we've explored the power of those inner conversations.
We talked about the good,
the
the
good,
ugly,
ugly, yeah.
and we've uncovered some pretty insightful strategies for shifting those negative patterns.
Right.
But now it's time to really equip you
Yeah.
with some specific techniques and exercises that you can start using today
Let's do it.
to take your self-talk to the next level.
To the next level.
Okay, so it's like we've laid the groundwork,
Yeah.
and now we're ready to build a toolkit
Toolkit.
for transforming that inner critic into a supportive coach.
I love that.
So one technique that we found to be incredibly effective is something called thought stopping.
Okay, thought stopping. That sounds intriguing. How does that work?
Well, it's actually pretty simple.
Okay.
When you catch yourself spiraling into that negative self-talk,
Uh-huh.
imagine a big, bright, red stop sign.
So you mean like literally interrupt those thoughts?
Yeah, the idea is to break that negative thought pattern before it gains momentum
Okay.
and create space for a more positive perspective to emerge.
So it's like hitting the pause button on your inner critic,
Exactly.
giving yourself a chance to reevaluate the situation.
Yeah, and once you've stopped that thought in its tracks,
Okay.
you can consciously choose to replace it with a more helpful
Yeah.
and empowering one.
Okay.
So for example, instead of saying, I'm going to fail this test,
Yeah.
you might say, I've studied hard and I'm going to do my best.
Much better.
Right.
It's like taking control of the steering wheel of your mind.
Yes.
Choosing to navigate towards a more positive destination.
Love it.
Now, another technique that's super useful for transforming negative self-talk is cognitive restructuring.
Okay, that sounds a little bit more complex.
It's not as bad as it sounds.
So what is it?
It's about identifying those irrational or unhelpful thoughts
Okay.
that fuel negative self-talk and then challenging them
Okay.
with evidence and logic.
So it's like putting those negative thoughts on trial,
Exactly.
gathering evidence for it against them,
Yeah.
and then coming up with a more balanced and realistic perspective.
Give me an example.
So let's say you're about to give a presentation,
Uh-huh. Classic anxiety-producing situation.
and that familiar ways of anxiety hits.
Yeah.
And you start thinking, I'm going to mess this up. Everyone's going to think I'm incompetent.
Ugh, we've all been there.
Right.
So with cognitive restructuring, you might ask yourself, what evidence do I have that I'm going to mess up?
Yeah, and you might realize that you've prepped thoroughly.
Right.
You know, your material inside and out.
Mm-hmm.
You've even practiced your delivery multiple times.
You've got concrete evidence to counter that negative thought.
Exactly.
Okay, so then what?
Then you might ask yourself, is it really true that everyone's going to think I'm incompetent if I make a small mistake.
Right, because everyone makes mistakes.
Yeah, and you might realize that most people are probably more focused on their own presentations
Right.
than on yours.
And even the most experienced speakers occasionally stumble.
Exactly. So by challenging those negative thoughts,
Yeah.
with evidence and a more realistic perspective,
Mm-hmm.
you're essentially creating space
Yeah.
for a more rational and supportive inner dialogue.
You're transforming that inner critic into a more helpful and realistic coach,
Yeah,
one who encourages you to do your best while acknowledging that perfection isn't the goal.
right. Okay, so here's an exercise that I find really helpful for building self-compassion,
Uh-huh.
which is so crucial for counteracting negative self-talk.
Absolutely.
It's called the self-compassion break.
Okay, self-compassion is so important, yet it's something that many of us struggle with.
It is.
So how does this work?
It's beautifully simple when you're feeling stressed, overwhelmed, or caught in a spiral of negative self-talk. Take a moment to pause and just acknowledge what you're feeling.
So just notice those difficult emotions.
Don't judge those feelings or try to push them away.
Okay.
Just notice them with kindness and curiosity.
So it's about bringing awareness to them without getting swept away by them? Exactly. And then remind yourself that everyone experiences these kinds of challenges. You're not alone in feeling this way. It's part of the shared human experience.
So you're not flawed or broken for having these feelings.
Right. Everyone goes through difficult times. And then the most important part,
Okay.
offer yourself some words of kindness and support.
Okay.
Talk to yourself the way you would talk to a close friend who is struggling.
Yeah.
You wouldn't judge them or criticize them. You'd offer them understanding and encouragement.
It's amazing how often we're so much harder on ourselves than we are on others.
It's true. We need to extend that same compassion and understanding to ourselves.
So we've discussed a lot of specific techniques, but one of the most foundational practices for transforming self-talk is cultivating mindfulness.
Mindfulness, yes. Such a powerful concept.
Can you remind us what mindfulness is all about?
It's about bringing your awareness to the present moment without judgment.
Okay.
It's about noticing your thoughts, feelings, and sensations without getting caught up in them or trying to change them.
So becoming a curious observer of your own mind rather than getting swept away by the current of your thoughts.
Exactly. You notice those negative thoughts, you acknowledge them, but you don't engage with them.
Okay.
Or allow them to control you.
So it's like watching clouds drift by in the sky.
Yes, you see them, you appreciate their beauty, but you don't try to grab hold of them or change their course.
That's a beautiful analogy. And as you practice mindfulness,
Mm-hmm.
you start to notice that those negative thoughts have less power over you.
They lose their grip on your attention, and you gain a sense of spaciousness and freedom.
So how do we cultivate mindfulness? What are some practical ways to incorporate it into our daily lives?
One of the most effective ways is through meditation.
Meditation, yeah, it's something I've always been curious about, but I haven't quite made it a regular habit.
I understand it can be challenging to establish a meditation practice,
Yeah.
but the benefits are truly remarkable, especially when it comes to transforming self-talk.
So what are some of those benefits?
Well, meditation helps you calm the chatter of your mind, reduce stress, and develop greater self-awareness.
And all of those things can have a positive ripple effect on our self-talk patterns.
Exactly. As you become more aware of your thoughts and less reactive to them, you create space for a more peaceful and compassionate inner dialogue.
It's like training your mind to become a sanctuary of positivity rather than a battleground of self-criticism.
I love that. And, there are specific types of meditation that are particularly helpful for cultivating positive self-talk.
Like what?
Well, one that comes to mind is loving kindness meditation, where you focus on sending compassion and well wishes to yourself and others.
That sounds beautiful.
It is. And there are also gratitude meditations, where you focus on all the things you're thankful for in your life,
Yeah.
no matter how small they might seem.
So it's about intentionally cultivating those positive emotions.
Exactly, and allowing them to permeate our inner dialogue.
And as you practice these meditations regularly,
Mm-hmm.
you'll likely notice that your self-talk naturally becomes more kind, supportive, and encouraging.
It's like you're planting seeds of positivity that eventually blossom into a garden of well-being.
And what's so amazing about all these techniques and exercises is that they're accessible to everyone.
Absolutely.
You don't need any special equipment, you don't need to join a gym, and you don't need to spend a lot of money.
It's about making a conscious choice to cultivate a more positive inner dialogue. And there are so many simple yet powerful ways to do that.
So as we wrap up our deep dive into the fascinating world of self-talk, what's the one message you want our listener to carry with them?
I think the key takeaway is that our self-talk truly matters. It shapes our thoughts, our feelings, and ultimately our actions.
Right.
And while we can't always control the initial thoughts that pop into our minds,
Yeah.
we absolutely have the power to choose how we respond to them.
We can choose to challenge those negative thoughts, reframe them, and replace them with more positive and empowering ones.
Exactly. And by cultivating a more positive, compassionate, and empowering inner dialogue,
Yeah.
we can unlock our full potential and live happier, healthier, and more fulfilling lives.
So well said. Thank you for joining us on this deep dive into the world of self-talk.
Yeah, this was a good one.
Remember, that conversation you have with yourself is arguably the most important one you'll ever have. So make it count.
Absolutely. And until next time, keep those positive thoughts flowing for
Good to have